Are you ready to transform your practice and align it with your true values? What would it look like if you dropped insurance plans and began offering a premium experience that not only increased your revenue per patient, but also created a thriving practice that you loved? In this episode, we talk about one doctor's remarkable journey of transforming her practice to a private pay model with a focus on balancing her work life responsibilities, all while facing tremendous personal challenges and adversity. Don't miss this inspiring conversation with Dr. Susan Elizondo. Hi, welcome to another episode of I Own a Business, where we focus on helping practice owners grow the practice of their dreams. I'm your host, Dr. Steve Vargo, and I have with me Dr. Susan Elizondo, who is owner of Westlake Hills Vision Center in Austin, Texas, which she purchased in 2019. And it's been a turbulent ride for Dr. Elizondo, filled with personal and professional setbacks, but her story is also a great example of resilience and fortitude. And if you're feeling stressed or stuck as an OD or practice owner, I think you'll find inspiration from her story. So, hey, Susan,
Hi, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for joining.
Nate,
I
thanks for having me.
just met your son. So Susan
Yeah.
is pulling mom duty and the life of a business owner too. So she's got a sick child at home. So um, hopefully he's doing better real soon. Um,
Hopefully. It's been some
Susan,
long nights.
I'm sorry.
It's been some long nights.
It's been some,
Uh,
I know ours are past that stage, but they still get sick, but now they take care of themselves at 15 and 17, not as dependent on us. So, based on what some things you sent me, Susan, I want to give a little bit of background to provide context for your practice, which you purchased, I believe, in 2019.
hmm
And you made a move to go completely private pay, which included not taking vision or medical, which, as
Correct.
you might expect, you're
Mhm.
seeing fewer patients, but your revenue per patient has gone from $450 to $1,790. So I repeat that. Revenue per patient has gone from 450 to $1,790 with just two full-time staff. You work in the office as an OD 3 days a week and closed on weekends. And you mentioned something in an email you sent to me. You said constant change is incredibly stressful and nerve wracking, but it's getting me to what I hope will eventually be my ideal practice. And
Mhm.
it sounds like you're also striving for the life that you wanted as well, including that work-life balance to spend time with family and the little one who's unfortunately sick right now. Would that be accurate?
Yeah, yeah. And it was a slow process. It definitely didn't happen overnight. So I almost, when I bought the practice of February of 2019, I unwittingly dropped like 10 insurances, like, because I just signed up with the ones that I knew I wanted to take. And so I took six medical and like three vision, IMED, VSP, and superior at the time. And I, being naive in business purchasing and what I should have looked at before and buying, like I basically I dropped a ton of insurances to begin with, but actually revenue was fine. And so the next year when I was looking at my numbers and I talked to Nathan and I was Nathan Hayes and I was like, I'm tired of taking these insurance. It's so frustrating. Is the other thing that happened to me the first week I bought my practice and I was 5 months pregnant when I initially bought. So on top of like being a first time pregnant mom and all of that comes with it, I just bought a business and then the person that I had hired to do my insurance for me quit that first week because I wouldn't let them bring their dog to work. So I was like, well, okay. So it was fairly slow. So I was like, well, I can figure out how to do this myself. And so I figured out how to bill insurance and do everything. And in doing that, I just realized, wow, I'm getting paid crap for my time. Like this isn't worth it. And so the next year I kind of took a look at the numbers because we have Edge Pro through iDoc and spoke to Nathan Hayes, and he was kind of like, you're not seeing a lot of patients. I know you should really let one go. But if you were going to, like, this is the one where you have the least amount of patients, because we had like 50 patients the whole year that used it, and it was like our lowest per collection average for each patient. And so we ended up dropping Superior, and the next year we were like up 15%, and then we dropped IMED, and then we were up again. And I made the choice partly because I was, I was supposed to be a new mom. I was 5 months pregnant, but labor did not go well. And so I ended up unexpectedly holding my baby and saying goodbye the day he was supposed to be born. And I got an infection after that, that landed me in the hospital. And it was hard, but it definitely reset my priorities a little bit. Because then 2 months later, I found out I was pregnant again. And then when that baby was due, the pandemic came. And so in my mind, I valued my time so much more by the time the second one was born. And I also had the mindset of just, let the practice go bankrupt, let the world burn. I'm staying home with my baby, like come hell or high water, because I don't want anything to happen to him. Um, and I also kind of went on a journey of changing my practice into more of an optical boutique, because that's something that could generate passive income when I was not actually in the practice, and of kind of being more selective in in valuing my time, and putting more effort into patients that saw value in what I did, instead of just coming to me because I happened to take their insurance, but not really sharing any of the values and principles that the practice has. Um, and so I joined a different group called Optical Success Academy, and that kind of helps you geared more towards that high-end optical boutique and building the connection with patients. Like, I send out a monthly printed newsletter to um, a select group of my patients that I really want to connect with. I send out emails on a weekly basis. We post on Facebook, Instagram. We send out postcards anytime we have stuff done. But we and it it may not be the most popular thing to do, but we live in our office. That's where we go most of our day. And I want it to be a pleasant experience for me, and I want it to be a pleasant experience with my team members. So if we have somebody that we just doesn't seem to like us and we don't seem to like them, I inactivate their chart. Like, I am very liberal about doing it, because it's like they're not having a good time. We're not having a good time. They're going to be better served elsewhere, and it's less headache for everyone around. And in doing that, you start to collect only the people that really have your same vision and believe in what you do and like you as a person and want to support you. And I think having that connection is what helps in increasing that collections per exam, because they trust you and they like you, and this is the place where they want to go, and they're more likely to refer others that feel the same way. But
Thank you for sharing. The it it sounds like you have a very clear vision at this point of some things that I don't think a lot of people put maybe as much thought as they should into when they do start a practice. And probably this goes for any business owner, is looking beyond the business to what kind of life do I want to build? What do I want my lifestyle to look like? And also, what do I want my life within the practice to look like? You mentioned some very clear things that um, really exemplified your vision of what you wanted your day to feel like. Did you have that same vision when you opened the practice, or was it a series of things that and challenges that you just spoke of that caused you to reevaluate what you wanted this practice and to look like, and how that was going to support the life that you wanted?
I think it was the challenges that I encountered. So one was the loss of the insurance biller and kind of seeing financially on the backside what we actually make. And I've always been a numbers person. But then the other thing was losing that first child, because going into that pregnancy and buying the business, I'm like, man, I've always wanted to buy a business. Oh, it's really inconvenient to be pregnant right now. Oh, it's going to be so like, how many, maybe I can come back after 2 weeks, maybe, and it was just like, how is this kind of inconvenience going to fit in with what I'm doing? And then everything happened. And it just kind of completely shifted things to me trying to work my life around the business to like, I need to make the business what I need it for me because my priority is no longer the business. My priority is having that kiddo and I got my second chance. I have my
Mhm.
miracle baby. And so I'm going to do what I can to spend this quality time because I don't know how much time I have. And I also found during the pandemic, I was like, well, okay, I was the second pregnancy, like earlier on, you get kind of tired and it's hard to breathe and walk. And I was just like, okay, you know what? Just shift my schedule so that like all my stuff is booked around from lunch out. So I go in later and I leave earlier because I was like the white whale, man, trying to get through. And I was like, oh, this didn't really affect the amount of revenue we collected. And then when I was on maternity leave, I moved everything to just 3 days, and I was like, we're making the same amount that we did in 5 days, and people can always like, there's always that off week where we change the schedule, so if somebody really needs a Wednesday, like, there's always gonna be a week in the year where this happens, but I found that people don't really need the day that they say, like, if they wanna they can make the other days happen.
You'll find out how loyal people are when you don't take their insurance.
Yeah, and so it's like after going on that maternity leave, I was like, "Oh, okay, like I can condense all my patients because I've heard, I believe either you or Nathan talk about it before, but it's a scary thing to do, but then when it's like, well, I kind of have to because I can't afford to pay a fill-in doc for 5 days a week when I see like so few patients." Um, and I was like, "Okay, that works." And so then we just kind of kept that schedule going forward and I still have it to this day. Um, so it just kind of those little things like shift the perspective. And it's also one of the books that I read in the past year kind of helped solidify the way I was thinking of things. I don't know if you've ever heard of the pumpkin plan.
Oh my gosh. So it's written right here. I wrote it as a note as you were talking. So yes, and that is the book I thought you were just going to say. I literally have it written down right here as you were. It's a great book, which if you want to give a 12-second synopsis, feel free. But yeah, it really speaks to what you said about doing business with people that like doing business with you and you like doing business with them.
Yeah, so it's a book where basically a guy talks about is if you think about pumpkins and you're trying to grow a really big pumpkin, you've got to cut off all the other rotten little pumpkins that are taking away energy from this big pumpkin that the vine is trying to grow. And so as a business, you've got to cut out the clients that are taking up a lot of time and effort and not aren't really producing revenue for you because sometimes people think of like revenue as a bad thing, but that's how you run your business, that's how you pay your staff. My staff doesn't run for free, they don't give me free rent. Like these are things I have to pay or I'm going to go bankrupt. Like um and it's easier to see 5 patients and make like $20,000, right? Than it is to see 200 patients and make $20,000. So and the book talks about how there's this fear of if you kind of get rid of those other clients that you're just not going to make it, you're going to lose all your clients and everything is going to go under. But what in actuality happens is you have more time to dedicate to those clients that really believe in what you believe in and you do a better job with them so you kind of actually create more loyal clients that spread that word that you're loyal and you end up kind of seeing less people and have a better time doing it. So
Now, this is something I would encourage people to do, and you did it as sort of it sounds like a process of things that happened to you caused you to reevaluate your priorities. But even without those challenges, something I would encourage people to do is really sit down and give serious thought to what you want your life to look like. What do you want your practice to look like? And stay true to that. Now, you might not ever fully get there, but go on that journey because you might just do it, or at least you might come a lot closer than if you never did that. There's another book. It's called 10x is easier than 2x, and it talks about once you define what your big goals are, your 10x goals, it actually makes it easier because sort of the 2x goals require us to get incrementally better, which opens up all kinds of possibilities, but almost too many possibilities. Versus if I'm going to grow 10x, what do I want this practice to look like? Now, a 10x goal would be going from 450 to 1790. It doesn't even sound real. It sounds fictitious. But if you set that as a goal, a 10x goal, what are the handful of things that you would have to do to get to that point? So I know people are wondering, can I ask what are some of the strategies that you implemented to, obviously you're seeing fewer patients, but how did you do that? How did you take that metric and turn it in a um almost what quadrupled than from what you had? I know people are
Well,
wondering how you did that.
I mean, one of the first things I did was dropping insurance. You're limited by the amount that you can collect and the profit margin that you can make because there are set copays, there's set amount for the exam. You've got to get a patient basically that buys 3 pairs before you're out of what insurance dictates. You have to discount. So one is to drop the plans that aren't good for your business or that are the least profitable for your business. And then the next thing is you can't just say, "Hey, I'm here and I'm going to charge you a higher price." You've got to have the aesthetic that does that. So I've spent a lot of money on we've redone the we've pretty much redone everything in the practice because if you want somebody to come in and to like pay top dollar for what you're offering, you have to look like you need to pay top dollar for it. You can't like have somebody go to McDonald's and then charge them $50 for a burger. Like it just won't work. One of the things that we discovered, because early on I'd spent more money in the optical because I wanted it to be optically focused. Because there's nothing that can generate as much revenue as the optical, which some people might disagree, but I can see one patient an entire year and have the potential. I had one patient last year that in a year's time span spent 75,000 in my optical. There is no medical procedure that we can do that's going to generate that same amount on one single visit. Um, and so I noticed that the people that would walk in with their scripts were more open to pay higher pricing. I also all my pricing is set on the higher end of the market. It's all on the premium side. Um, and so I was like, why is there so much less resistance? And then I realized, oh, they're not seeing the dingy back of my office that like has a desk with like pieces falling off of it. So we redid the back. And then the other thing is like training. We train our team to speak in a certain way when they answer the phone, to answer questions in a certain way, to present ourselves a certain way. We have a certain way we do an optical dispense. They sit down, we bring them frames on a tray like it's jewelry we're presenting them, and we give them advice like it's a personal consultation. Um, but we're very cognizant of like wording, and how you speak to the patient. Um, and it, and if there is somebody that is not doing that, I've kind of geared my practice in a way where it's not going to cause some sort of passive aggression, or I just go up to them and I say, "Hey, do you realize you just said that to the patient? Why would you say that? Like, this is why it doesn't make sense." And we have like weekly team meetings, we have daily huddles, we have one-on-one meetings with the team. So I've done a lot of time investment in the team because that's who they are going to speak to and have the most interaction with, as far as clients go.
You do much external, you're talking about some branding aspects, which I agree. It becomes really important. You almost don't have a choice that if you're going to drop everyone's insurance and deliver a higher level product, service, that you have to have the branding that supports that. And that's what you did. And you referenced some things internally as far as the internal design of the practice, staff training, I'm sure that leads to word of mouth, obviously, as you deliver a superior experience. Do you do anything externally, any kind of marketing outside the practice to create awareness for the brand that you've built?
Um, we have, but like we just got our website redone. I mean, I've tried a BNI, didn't do so much. Tried Chamber of Commerce, didn't really do so much. Tried printed ad or mailed out. So we've tried stuff over the years, but we've haven't found too much success with it. I think sometimes those things are a lot harder sell when it's like, oh, you don't take my insurance. Okay, So it's harder to get somebody off the street that doesn't know anything about you to come in and drop $1,200 on a pair of glasses, right? um, completely private pay. Um, so those avenues haven't been too successful for us. The most successful has been more the internal marketing and kind of making the most of each patient encounter.
So I didn't intend to ask this many questions about the not taking insurance, but let me, before we move on, let me just ask one more because I think people are probably curious of this as well. How do you explain to people that you don't take insurance? If someone calls up and you have to, there's that moment where they have insurance and they think that most practices will take it. What is the communication methods that you use to communicate to that person that you don't? Obviously, you're trying to still get them to come into your practice.
So our dropping insurance has been a like 5-year process till where we finally dropped all of it as of January 1st. And I will say, just because I know a lot of people out there ask, well, why wouldn't you take medical? They have pay a decent amount for an exam. I'm like, well, I I charge more for my private pay price, and also I want people. You have to kind of keep your ideal clientele in mind. I don't want just anybody coming in to have an exam. I want people coming in because they want to do glasses with us, and then we can give them the convenience of an eye exam, which is a bit different. And so, because we were running into part of the issue is like, oh my gosh, you give an amazing exam, but your glasses are kind of expensive. And it's like, well, okay. And so then we made the decision to drop medical, and it didn't make any difference whatsoever as far as our revenue goes. But so the staff has kind of been used to over the past 5 years, because we've been continually dropping things of just previously we've just been like, yeah, we're completely private pay. We can help you out. We can give you an itemized receipt. Oh, do you take my insurance? Well, we can absolutely still see you, but as far as insurance, the way it works is we can give you an itemized receipt afterwards, and then you submit it to your insurance company, which is what we tell them for medical. Um, and for vision, we just started using Anagram this year. Um, and I have a love-hate relationship with it. Love because it's like, yeah, we can still see you. We'll do all the back end work for you. You don't have to do anything. We'll submit your claim and they reimburse you directly, but you pay us up front. Um, but then sometimes they're like, well, how much do I reimburse? It's like, oh, $40. Or, oh, they only reimburse this. And then they're kind of a part of that irritation because you're the one delivering the message gets kind of shifted onto you. But I think it patients do appreciate it. But then I'm like, oh, our patients that have been with us for years, they probably would have come to us anyways, whether or not we used it. But we do it as a courtesy for those patients that you kind of end up signing up for a year. You've ended up paying for this insurance anyway. How can we help you out with it? Um, and then for the people that decide not to come with for us, sometimes we've had them, they go away and then they come back, like, and they pay private pay the next year because they haven't had as good an experience, or we weren't just right for them. They were just coming to us only because they had insurance. And again, that's not my ideal client. That's not the person that I'm trying to like bring into my practice. So it just kind of helped me weed somebody out that was taking up chair time and space and staff time that wasn't really my ideal clientele.
Most of the practices that I've seen that were successful with dropping insurance have taken a very patient-centric approach with the communication, focusing less on how I don't think the average patient is really losing sleep over low reimbursements to their eye doctor. But,
Mhm.
that communication has typically gone out in a way that makes patients aware of the level of service that they will be getting or potentially were getting with their plan. And I don't think most people realize the limitations that they're bound to when they're going through their insurance. And I think some of the more effective communication strategies I've seen made that clear to the patient that we as a practice don't feel comfortable with the level of care that we can provide. We hold ourselves to a certain expectation here. We're not able to provide that to our patients, and that's why we made the decision to drop insurance. And I think that plants a seed in the mind of the patient. Wait a second, I didn't know. I thought just insurance gave me full access to whatever I wanted, but as we know, that's not the case.
And we've also emphasized that, in order to try and kind of make ends meet with insurance, they want you to see more patients, and that's just not how we want to run. We don't want to be a mill. We want to give patients plenty of chair time. We book 45-minute exams. Um, and so we want to give patients the option to talk about everything. And we don't want to, if you have some medical issue going on, be like, oh, wait, stop. We have to have this conversation about how that's technically a medical issue. And we need to blah, 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 and have this whole conversation. It's like, you have something going on? No problem. We'll take care of you. Doesn't matter whether it's strictly vision or medical or what. So it just lets us take care of them better.
I'm not sure I could think of a better way to simplify a practice than to take insurance out of the equation.
Mhm. Staff
You
loves
meant
it.
yeah, I can imagine the staff loves it. It really probably streamlines a lot of operations and conversations in the office. On that topic, revenue, you mentioned the importance of knowing your numbers and making what you describe as decisions outside the norm. So I'm curious if you can elaborate on, there's 10,000 numbers you can track. Do you have a few favorites? And can you expand on what you mean by outside the norm?
So my favorite numbers to track are collections per exam. I like to look at capture rate and second pair capture rate. And I am the nut job with Edge Pro. I like look at it every morning. I double check my numbers against what Edge Pro shows me versus what's in my system. And if it's incorrect, I contact them. They all know me. Like to have it updated. My account is synced like twice a week. If something new has been added to our system and it's not appearing in Edge Pro, my optical manager contacts them to make sure that it is, because if the numbers aren't accurate, it's not really doing me much good. And I like to look at, I like to look at my total collections, and I look at that versus the previous year, previous month, and Edge Pro has that very nicely laid out for you. My collections per exam, the total number of exams that we see. I like to look at that number because I've been constantly changing. And since I started, I've been dropping insurances. And so thus far, there has never been a year where I've seen more exams than the previous year. Um, but we've still actually been fine revenue wise every year. And that complete pair capture rate and the number of second pairs sold. And then the other one that I like to look at is I like to look at my sales average. So usually I do that on a kind of like a monthly basis where um and again, I keep talking about Edge Pro because that's what I like to use. But if you go into Edge Pro and you go to advanced reporting and then you go to Edge Marks Matrix, generally it will let you look at the month and bring up what your averages are by plan. So you can say, okay, my average collections per exam for private pay is this, my average collections for exam for insurance, this insurance is this, and this other insurance is this, and this other insurance is this, which I don't have to use that anymore, but I used it a lot previously. Um,
With your team, how open book are you with numbers in terms of you've got clear goals around numbers and you keep a close eye on them? I'm curious if you use those to set goals for the staff, and how do you keep them aligned with the goals that you're setting for the practice?
so I do, they all have access to Edge Pro. They can look at it as much as they want. They see all the same numbers I do there. Um, they all have access to, if they wanted to go into Crystal and pull any sort of different report that they wanted, they could pull any report that they want. And they know how to pull like our daily report, a monthly report to see how much we've had as far as collections. Um, and I try to go over like, because sometimes it's like, okay, this is what it costs, and they can easily find like, if they want it, I can show them where all the numbers are. They have access to it
Mhm.
of like, this is how much this lens costs us to be made, and this is how much we charge the patient. And then I have to say, now please keep in mind, we are on the more premium end of things because we are sitting down for an hour with that patient. We do a very thorough inspection when it comes in. We do all the training to be able to interact with that patient. We do, like, I take them to a conference or to a trade show, or we do team activities so that we can work better as a team to better serve the patient. So it's not just cost of goods, and there's a lot that goes into the price that we're presenting to the patient. And I just try and make sure that they understand that.
I think one of the benefits of going the direction you have is you don't have to deal as much, I guess I'll say, with one of the bigger challenges offices are having right now, which is not being able to find staff and being understaffed and having, issues with people leaving. So you're able to operate right now with two full-time staff. However, you still have a brand that you're trying to convey onto them. And this is an area where I think a lot of owners struggle because in their mind, they've got the kind of brand and the kind of practice that they want to build. But let's just say it's a practice with 12 employees. And there's been
Mhm.
some, new, some staff have left, new ones coming in, trouble with retention, and trying to make sure that everybody is aligned on the brand and the kind of service we want to deliver and the kind of experience we need to create. Any tips or suggestions for doctors, because you've had to do that within your own practice, and like I said, the model you've created requires you to do that with fewer people, which perhaps makes it a little bit easier. But even you alluded to times where things don't always go right and you've got to address it with the staff. Is it just a training issue? Are there, what do you do? What is your approach to making sure that the staff is continually made aware and reminded of the kind of brand that you're trying to build and maintain?
And so one of the other things that we've kind of tried to do to differentiate ourselves is we carry almost exclusively independent brands. So I'm very much an idealist. Like, I'm vegan, and so that's probably why I'm like so hardcore too, and like other aspects of life. But I feel like VSP is my competitor. And so, one, if I see their patients, I'm making my competitor money, and then they try and steal my patient away from me. So that's not good for my business model. So then why would I carry any brand that they want me to carry? So I got rid of all the Marchand, the Altair, the all of that very early on in the practice. And then I got also mad because I'm like, well, Luxottica is my competitor as well. Like, they own all this stuff. I meant, like, why would I have any of their products in my office? So we carry no Luxottica whatsoever. We completely phased it out. We also have tried not to carry any brands that can be sold online. So we're not price shopped. Um, and then in that effort to kind of, and so when I hire somebody, I make sure, one, they're on board with that, and usually they're very excited for those independent brands that are of high quality, and they get 2 free pairs of clear glasses and 1 sunglass pair a year, and so they are in the product themselves. Um, and a lot of it is hiring for the right, well, there's you hiring for the right attitude is one piece of it, but they've also got to be like very competent, because there's a specific way we do things, there's a way you want to present, there's like a whole lot that goes into it. So there have been times where I found, oh goodness, like this person, they're just, I need a body, but they're not the right image for my practice. They're harming what I want to build, even though they are the nicest person ever. They're not the right person for this team. And so there have been times where I've let somebody go, even though I didn't have a replacement. I didn't have, it was harder. We were short staffed, but I was like, I would rather be short staffed for that time period than have somebody in here that it doesn't properly represent me. Um, and what the business is trying to build. And it's something that we talk about on a daily basis, on a weekly basis. We talk about it all the time.
I think some practices are never able to launch the brand that they want or that the owner wants because they can't get that part right. They can't get the people part right. And to me, what I've seen is it seems like a two-pronged, we can call it a two-pronged approach or a two-pronged problem, but getting the right person in there. And it's not a perfect science. The best HR managers in the world sometimes get it wrong. But, maybe developing some skills on the interviewing side, knowing what you're looking for, having core values, which maybe I'll ask you about that too. Core values are great because they help define, really, I think it helps streamline a lot of the decisions you want to make. So there's getting the right person in. But then there's also the aspect of once they're in, making sure that they're trained and continually communicated with on expectations and what that brand is. And you mentioned you talk about it daily and weekly. And a phrase came to mind that I heard before: when people are tired of hearing you say it, that's when they're starting to hear it. And I hear owners sometimes go, I told them, I just want to tell them it once and have them do it. And I'm like, well, that sounds great, but that's not really how it usually works. So, but once they're hearing something daily and regularly, that really speaks to the brand that you're trying to build, then eventually it does start to, I think it starts to sort of penetrate into people's minds and the way that they show up to work.
Yeah.
Can you speak to your core values? Because I know you mentioned something to me before about that, and um,
Yeah. We
you,
have
you
we have those.
never-ending improvement. I'm sorry, I was trying to find it here in my notes. So one of your core values is constant and never-ending improvement. And that's interesting. And that's another point I'm going to ask you about the staff, because sometimes, and we do this as human beings, we all do it. Sometimes we get comfortable with the status quo. So sometimes we need to even self-motivate ourselves, but that's another challenge for a lot of doctors, is motivating the staff. And when you say a core value is constant and never-ending improvement, how do you keep the engine moving in an office with people that sometimes, what I'll hear a lot is, well, it's hard to motivate people.
I think part of that is checking in on that, just being direct with people. Um, I tend to be very direct because, like, if you're having a meeting and one of your team members like makes a face or rolls their eyes or what, you're like, "What? You made a face? What?" And they're like, "Oh, no, no, no." I was like, "It's not nothing. Just tell me." And then they'll tell you, and it's like, "Okay, well, I mean, you make a valid point." It's also like when they have hesitations or they have they're the devil's advocate for an idea, to be like, yeah, I totally get it, you have a great point, and just be willing to be like, okay, you have a point, but and you can go back and forth with it, or you have a point and that's a really good point, this is probably not the best idea. Like, we cannot actually do it. It's just being showing that you're open to have discussion over the ideas that you present and that it's not a complete dictatorship. Um, I think that's a big one. And I think I'm a person that, although one of our core values is constant and never ending improvement, I would like it if everything remained the status quo and nothing ever changed. Like, I don't move my furniture in my house. I really like things to be the same. But I understand if I want to get where I'm going, I've got to change stuff. So I feel like I really get it when the team is kind of like, well, I don't know about this. And then you kind of explain your reasonings behind why you want to do it and what the long-term reasoning is, because if and then you do it, and then you have to be the one that every week or every time it's not done, you remind the team to do it and remind them why we do it until it becomes a habit.
I'm glad you brought that up, the part about this being that you want the staff and yourself to collaborate on ideas and for it not to be a dictatorship. Because I feel like I need to go back with things I said before, because I think that's very important, that there is a sense of collaboration and involvement with the team. So I feel like I need to clarify what I said as far as setting expectations. I do think it's important for an owner, for anyone who owns a business, leads a team, to have a vision of what they'd like to build. You probably should have that. But bringing everyone else into the mix, I think, is actually a great way to motivate. And some people are a little bit more micromanagers, or they like to be the ones that sort of tell everyone else what to do. But I think that becomes a challenge for the staff because now they feel like they're not involved, especially if they don't agree with your ideas. So it's a great point to bring up, that we want to make sure that the staff feels involved in the process, especially when there's change involved. Because when you say continuous improvement, that naturally implies change, and people need to know why. How does this benefit the patient? How does it benefit us? How does it benefit the practice? But making sure that you're clarifying not just what that is, but why you're doing it as well, I think is very important.
And then
Is
I
there,
would also
go
say
ahead. I'm
that,
sorry.
like, I pay my staff for the industry average. I pay my staff well, and they absolutely deserve every penny. And then we also have a bonus structure as far as revenue goes. So we know, like, if we hit, it's a tiered bonus structure. Like, the more we make, the more bonus each person makes. And I don't, even if it's slow, even if times are tough, I don't cut people's hours and like send them home early to like save 3 or 4 hours on their salary, like, because they are a part of my team and I'm there to take care of them, and I want them to have the security of knowing that, like, and even though I'm not in the office full time, I have my two team members are full time and we're 4.5 days a week. So I want them to have that security if ever there is a issue as far as like payroll or times are tough. Like, I have cut my salary to make sure that they're paid, because they need to feel like they are a part of the team and not expendable and not the thing that's going to be cut out when, when we've got to look at things. um so I just want to, I'm on their side, I am there for them and they are there for me.
Yeah. And you need them. I mean, really, for the kind of practice that you want to build, you can't do that on your own, and they represent that brand. So making sure that they're happy and there's a high trust environment, I think is really important to being successful with that. As we wrap things up here, I just have a couple questions left. One, anything you would do different?
Oh man, I mean, I feel like if I knew now what I knew when I bought my practice, we'd be in a much different place. Um, Essentially, I mean, for starters, I didn't really know how to read a profit and loss when I bought my practice, so I probably wouldn't have paid the amount that I paid for it. Um, but I would just start doing the things that I'm doing now. It took me a while to get to this mindset that I'm in, and if I think if I had the clear goal of what I wanted and what direction I wanted my practice to be, I would have gotten there much quicker. Because I've also veered into other side things where I like bought an RF and IPL, and I'm like, oh, it generates, but does it really generate more than what I'm paying for it? No, no, I probably could have saved like $70,000 right there. There are these kind of other forays until you get to the very, but if you have a very clear picture from the beginning, then all your funds and all your time and energy gets funneled to that one thing and it inevitably grows. So,
One
um,
of the reasons I really enjoy doing this podcast is because anybody who's had success can look back. And I think there's a correlation between the more success you've had and the more mistakes you've made, right? Because you were willing to try new things. You were willing to
mhm.
innovate, you were willing to change, and it's almost impossible not to break some eggs along the way. Could now, a lot of people would say the same thing you did. I probably could have done it quicker. Optometry is a lonely place sometimes. I mean, you go in and it's just you, and you're looking around and there's nobody there. It's you're on this ship that sometimes you feel is sinking. So I think it's important to reach out and get help from others. But I just one of the my small contribution to the industry is I love doing this podcast because I get to talk to people like you, and hopefully people listen to this and they take ideas from this that they can apply to their own practice. And so we'll close out here with just ask you if there's anything you would do different. So let's go the opposite direction. Let's jump into the future. What's next for you? What does your ideal practice look like 5 years from now, 10 years from now?
So, I mean, and that's my hope, is we've gotten to this point where we're private pay and then it's just going to build, build, build each year. And so eventually I get to be more hands off, more on the business management side of it instead of the clinical side of it, so that maybe I'm in the office only 1 day a week or 1/2 day a week, and it can still run just as successfully without me in there, and versus with me having to be uh in there as the doctor, is to develop it to the point where I can put another doctor in my place and just have the business management side of it on my plate. Um, and the I mean, eventually, I would like to move to a larger space that gives a bigger break room and a larger optical area and all of that stuff in like 5, 10 years. So
Well,
um
if history is our guide, I think you'll get there. So,
uh,
um, Susan, thank you for sharing your story. Really appreciate it. Really appreciate the candidness and the willingness to be open, and just congratulate you on the success that you've had in your practice. And I think it's a great reminder to dream big and set those
yeah.
goals that might even feel impossible, because you might just get there. So thanks so much for your time.
All right. Thank you. Good talking to you, Steve.
Thank you. And thanks everyone for listening. And we'll close out here. If you'd like more information about iDoc and how we work with ODs to help them grow their practice, you can find out more at idoc.net. So thanks everyone for listening. We'll see you next time.